I asked the Eden Zero community who their favorite shining star is, and today we finally have the answers. Not gonna lie, some of the results were pretty surprising. Now, before I get into the results, let me just take a few seconds to explain how this went down. First of all, I deliberately specified the original shining stars. As great as Homura is, I know it would have thrown off the results for, well, reasons. Plus, then if I do Homura, technically I gotta do Pino too, and then it's just a whole completely different thing. The other thing I will point out is that I personally stopped counting after 48 hours. So if you go to the poll right now and the numbers are a little different, that's why. But with that out of the way, let's move on to the results. At number 4, we have the original Sword of Eden's Valkyrie Yuna. Now look, when I say I was surprised by these results, I did not expect Valkyrie to score as low as she did. To be fair, 14% is still a decent chunk, but I thought she would at least get something closer to 20, especially considering all the votes went to Valkyrie when I started this poll. But while I'm surprised by the exact numbers, I'm definitely not shocked that Valkyrie came in last place. To be fair, she is a great character. Sun Jewel would not have had the same kind of impact without Homura's struggle, and that struggle wouldn't have been nearly as emotional without the sacrifices made by Valkyrie. Plus, I mean, come on, she's a badass samurai android. What's not to like? But while all of those things are great, that's really all there is to say about Valkyrie. She needed to die in order to set up the story the way it is. Naturally, that meant our time with Valkyrie was always going to be very limited. It also meant that her depth as a character was always going to be limited. There are moments that remind us how important she is, like the fact that one of the Night Gears is modeled after Valkyrie, or the fact that Shiki keeps her picture. And as you can see, fans still love her. But unfortunately, while she fulfilled her single purpose in the story, the other characters have had more than enough time to shine since we left Sun Jewel. So while I don't think anyone would deny Valkyrie's impact on the story, the fact is that she just isn't relevant anymore, and she's probably never going to be relevant again. But that's actually a great segue into the number 3 spot. At number 3, we have Sister Ivory. This was another one where I was actually pretty surprised by the numbers, because Sister is a pretty popular character. For starters, there were plenty of people that commented about how they liked Sister. And of course, there's the fact that everyone freaked out at the smallest of crumbs of a Sister holy ship. If that isn't proof that people care about her, then I don't know what is. Which is why I was surprised that she didn't even get 20% of the vote. But like Valkyrie, while I'm disappointed by the number, I'm not exactly surprised by the overall result. In a previous video on the Shining Stars, I explained how the Shining Stars are sort of taking the backseat behind the next generation of characters. But even among the Shining Stars, Sister has probably had the most passive role in the story, partly due to the fact that she's the healer. But even then, it's not really an excuse when you know what she's capable of in a fight. So there's this issue of like, yeah, she's a cool character, and yeah, she talks like a badass, but in reality, she doesn't really do anything. It also doesn't help that out of the arc centered around introducing the Shining Stars, Sisters is probably my least favorite. I'm not saying it was a bad arc, but the villain was pretty run-of-the-mill, and the arc itself wasn't nearly as emotional or dramatic as the other ones. Now, with all this trash talk, I'm sure you think I hate Sister. And let me just stop you right there, because I love Sister. That scene where she breaks down into tears with Witch, timeless. And it actually kind of speaks to her real character. Because while Sister talks like a bully, she's just as compassionate as any of the other crew members. And while she clearly has way too much fun torturing people, she also has shown time and time again that she has a strong desire to heal people. She made it her mission to heal clean, and she told Lobelia without question that she would heal her. So while Sister might not be the most relevant of the characters that are still in the story, there's still a lot to like about her character that you could argue makes her underrated. But that's the thing. You can make those arguments, but at the end of the day, she still has a very passive role in the story. She's a vocal member of the crew, but unlike Hermit, she does next to nothing whenever she stays on the ship. So as much as I love her, it's not really surprising why she landed where she did. Now, before I move on to the number 2 spot, I'd like to share this week's comment of the week from Manga Kage. If you'd like me to share your comment in the next video, then make sure to share your Shining Star rankings down below. With that out of the way, let's move on to the number 2 spot. At number 2, with 29% of the vote, is Hermit Mio. Also, in case you're wondering, you're not the only one who forgot Hermit's last name was Mio. Anywho, Hermit taking almost a third of the votes is probably a surprise to literally no one. Because let's be honest, everyone likes Hermit. She's cute, she's great with computers, she's got a badass ability. Also, not many people talk about this, but she's also got a hilarious sense of humor. Now, on top of all the many cool things about her is also the fact that Hermit is just a great character. Aside from like Rebecca's maybe, Hermit's backstory is the first real tragic backstory in Eden Zero. And everyone who reads that backstory gets the same reaction of like, wow, okay, this story is getting dark. So when you see her overcome that struggle and start to open up around the other characters, you find that you have a strong investment in her character. And to go along with that, she's one of the most vulnerable characters in the story. By that, I mean that she's willing to be honest and open about how she feels, and we continue to see her grow throughout the story. Part of why I like Forresta so much is because we see Hermit ready to do whatever it takes, then break down completely only to overcome another overwhelming struggle and come out of it even stronger. Now, of course, as I hype up Hermit, I'm sorta ignoring the fact that she still didn't come in at number 1. Personally, I wasn't really surprised by this. I thought it was 50-50, but when I saw who won, I knew exactly why it happened. Now, if you ask me, I think this is partly due to a bit of recency bias. In other words, and I'm not saying this is gonna happen, so don't at me, but for the sake of argument, let's say Hermit died in this arc, and it was super emotional. Then I think Hermit would just barely come in at number 1 if I were to do another poll. In fact, if that happens, we might just need to confirm my little theory. But before I move on to the number 1 spot, I do want to address one criticism of Hermit that is 100% valid. Essentially, it's the idea that Hermit's introduction was great and everything, but it felt like she got over her trauma with humans just a little too quickly. And you know what? Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. Don't really have a good explanation, it's just the way I felt. But regardless, I don't think anyone would hold that against Hermit, which is why she came so close to number 1. Speaking of which, it's time we discuss the winner of the poll. I'm sure you figured it out a long time ago. And by a long time, I mean like, I don't know, 9 minutes. But at number 1, the fan-voted favorite of the Shining Stars is Witch Regret. Now, if I were to ask you why Witch came in at number 1, I'm sure 10 out of 10 people would point to her death. Which is hilariously tragic when you think about it, but it's true. As sad as it is, this death cemented Witch as an amazingly well-written character. Like Hermit, Witch has a lot going for her. She's smart, she's funny, she has one of my favorite ether gears in the story, and yes, that does mean I also really like Wizard. And in terms of what she contributed to the story, Witch arguably had the most active role out of the Shining Stars. This can be seen by the fact that as soon as she died, everyone was wondering who was going to fill her shoes. Now, unlike the other Shining Stars, Witch didn't really get a very dramatic introduction. She sorta just, well, actually she didn't sorta, she literally popped out of nowhere. So because of that, Witch might not have been your favorite Shining Star from the very beginning. But as time went on, it only became more and more clear just how important she was to the crew. Witch was the one who took charge. Shiki obviously had his goals, but Witch was the one to give guidance and direction to those goals. Plus, there were a number of times where Witch took the initiative to help the crew. On Red Cave, she was the one who recruited Laguna. And when Rebecca needed training, Witch was the one to help her become a Chrono Witch. Still waiting to see how that worked out, by the way, but my point still stands. And you know, as much as Sister is the healer of the group, Witch was always the support system. I mentioned how I liked the scene where Sister breaks down into tears, and Sister was only able to open up like that because of Witch. With Witch around, it just made everything feel like it was secure. Rightfully so, considering she was the Shield of Edens. Which brings me to my next point. With all of this great characterization, it set up the intense impact of Witch's death. As you can tell, Witch had always been the mom of the group as she led the team and supported the others, even if it was never explicitly mentioned. Not only did the characters feel this way, but we as readers had come to see her as the mom of the group. So when she tells the others that she loves them and goes out in a bang, it leaves a big gap in the crew for both the characters and the readers who had taken her role in the story as a given. And on top of the emotional impact, this death perfectly wrapped up Witch's character. It reflected her role as the mother, and it gave it more substance. It gave us context for why she enjoyed this role and what had motivated her until the very end. So, don't get me wrong, I still love all of the Shining Stars, and I think most fans feel the same way. But along with the clear results from the fanbase, I would say that Witch is my favorite member of the 4 Shining Stars. And that's it for this discussion. I hope you enjoyed this poll because it's something I want to do more of in the future. On that note, make sure to comment with some other polls you'd like to see in a video. Also, if you enjoyed this discussion, then make sure to let me know by liking the video. And if you'd like more Eden Zero discussions like this one, then make sure to subscribe and follow along with each week's video. Thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.